About that, you were a mature student, right? You got into philosophy a bit later in life, so maybe we can start from there. Okay,
that's the cut.
Let's go.
So, hello, Marianne. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. We're really proud to have you. It was a little bit difficult to set up the timing, but we really appreciate for you to spare some minutes to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marianne.
My pleasure too.
For our viewers, Marianne has been a great figure for me, in many ways a mentor. When I first got into philosophy, I was seeing one of her podcasts, Romp to the History of Philosophy, and then I saw the Critical Reasoning podcast, and I emailed her, and something like 20 or 30 days passed, and I didn't get a reply. And then suddenly she replied, and I remember, Marianne, you apologized because you had the flu and you took some time to respond, but you made a big impact on me because it was a big response. I wasn't expecting all of that because I told you my whole story, my interest in philosophy, and you told me, like, Mateus, maybe if you are interested in philosophy, you should come check it out, see if it's actually what you think it is. And you actually invited me to a lecture in Oxford, and I took your word for it. And I went to two lectures there, one in Imperial College and the other was in Oxford, and it was great. And then I applied I did a whole plan, and I applied for studying philosophy in the UK, and the rest is history. Yeah, and I spent a month in Oxford, and you introduced me to that philosopher, Josenir, the Brazilian philosopher. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and it was a very complicated chain of things. Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, I would like to thank you for all of that. Yeah.
My pleasure. I'm delighted that it took so well.
On our side, we do this every week, so we won't bore you with our presentations. But I think it would be really interesting if you could give us a brief idea of your background, your interest, and I mean, we have a ton of questions that we'd like to answer. But set us up, please. Tell us a little bit of how you got involved with philosophy.
Okay. Well, I know that Mateus would like me to tell you a bit about how I came to philosophy, and that was I was thrown out of school at 15 because of truancy and disruption.
Wow.
Yeah. Thrown out. Yep.
Yeah, that I remember.
From 15, I had no education at all. I was traveling around the world. But when I came back, aged about 23, 24, I went to the Open University, which we have in this country, which is a wonderful thing. It's open access. You don't need any previous exams or anything. And I started doing a foundation course in arts. And halfway through that was a week on philosophy. And I found it the hardest thing I had ever done in my life. It was formal logic at the time.
Wow.
This was a long time ago. This was 40 years ago. And I sat up all night working on it. And in the morning, I thought that was the most interesting night I've had for a very long time. And then I did well in it. And the more I read about it, the more I thought, this is what I want to do. And so I went full-time as an undergraduate and then did well in my first degree and came on to Oxford for graduate work.
For graduate work. So your MA and then, I mean, not an MA, it's an MPhil in Oxford.
BPhil.
A BPhil?
It's a BPhil for Oxford, that's
BPhil
right.
for Oxford, and then a PhD.
That's incredible.
I never finished my DPhil. I got a job before I finished my DPhil.
Oh, really? You got into teaching before the...
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So, it's a bit of a big question, but I mean, looking back in your life without the tools of philosophy, the critical reasoning, how do you think life changes in a way once you start to get into deeper and deeper questions? I mean, it's a kind of a general...
It is an impossible question because I mean it involves spinning the possible worlds for a road I didn't take. Of course, the road I did take was the one in which I studied critical reasoning.
Yeah.
I'm forever thankful that I did. I mean, not least because it's paid for.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've been working as a professional philosopher since I was 32, I think. I'm endlessly glad that I've studied philosophy because it does enable you to approach anything that interests you in a disciplined way.
Right.
And there are many things that interest me. I mean, from politics to physics. I mean, any questions I might ask, like, well, are there possible worlds? Is the multi-world theory, multiverse, the proper interpretation of quantum mechanics? I mean, that's one question a philosopher can approach with the tools of philosophy. To everything like, should we allow those who followed ISIL to come back to England? Which is something in the news here at the moment.
Right.
Okay.
And the tools of philosophy can be used for both these things, and indeed anything else.
Yes, I remember you had a massive period in your life. You did a lot of work in bioethics, right? Mm-hmm. And those are very interesting questions. How did you approach the topic? And I mean, you ended up writing a book as well about bioethics, right?
I'm not sure how it came about. It was accidental, but I wrote an online course for Oxford on bioethics, and then I was approached by Cambridge University to ask to write a book for Cambridge University Press on bioethics, and I did that. I expanded the material I had researched into for the course for the book, and I greatly enjoyed doing it. And the book has sold very well. It's been very popular. It was an introduction to bioethics. And looked at things like cloning, genetic modification, the idea that we might soon discover how to live forever, and what the ramifications would that be for society and for the individual.
Yeah, they're all like very extremely profound and complex subjects. I think every one of those those topics will take hours of conversations to approach. But one of the things that I would like to ask you, Marianne, and I'm going a little bit in a tangent here, as we promised we will do. If you would have to make a case for the value of critical thinking and philosophy in modernity, how would you build a case for that?
Oh, very easily. I subscribe to what's called the dual process theory of mind. We have a phylogenetically more ancient part of our mind which enables us to respond very quickly to problems. So if I hear a rustle in a bush, I run out of the way without stopping to think, is this a sensible thing to do?
Correct.
But then there's a supplement to that, which is our system 2 or process 2 way of thinking, which involves effort and attention, and requires us really to override the process 1. So if maybe not running away from a rustle in the bushes, but at least if I think it's a tiger, I maybe can work out there are not many tigers in Oxford. But the sort of thing, if you're told that a bat and ball costs £1.10, and the bat costs £1 more than the ball, how much is the ball? Most people will answer 10 pence, but the answer is in fact 5 pence. Because the ball is 5 pence and the bat is £1 5 pence. So to think critically, you've got to override the automatic assumption that it's 10.
Correct.
You have to overcome them,
and come to the right answer. And the ability to do that and the willingness to do that, the willingness to put in the effort and the time and the attention to do that, is what enables you to get away from salesmen who are putting pressure on you, for example.
Right.
Get away from politicians who are telling you that this is what you want to do. You can stop and be critical. I mean, as Descartes said all those years ago, instead of taking what is presented to you at face value, you stop and you say, well, is that true?
Right.
Should I really accept that?
Right.
And that's what a background in critical thinking can do for you.
Right. So, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, the more I listen to you, I think there's so much true and relevance to the way you place it and the way you present the idea. But in itself, I think it's almost depressing to see how far we are from this and how immediate we are on.
You mean as a society?
As a society,
as
of course, as an average, no? How immediate we are, as the way we approach news, the way we approach politics, the way we approach social conflict, and everything has become so raw, so immediate, and I think it's also in a way related to our lack of tolerance to frustration and our growing need for immediacy. And I think all these processes that take careful thinking and in a way a proper education behind, in order for you to be ready to not to fall to this urge of these primary impulses of having this first process, and actually giving the time to go into detail and understanding what are the forces moving behind. And I'm feeling almost overwhelmed. How do we change that as a society? Is it even changeable?
We've got to be a bit careful because both are necessary. We need to be able to run from the rustle in the bushes as well, because it might be.
We can't forget that.
And so we need to be able to use both.
Processes.
We have to. We can't. We have to use the first process as well as the second.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree with you. I mean, unfortunately, there's in this society that rewards us for quick responses, and in which we often haven't got time to do anything, do any serious thinking. I mean, politicians in particular. I mean, at one point I chaired something called the National Forum of Values in Community Education and the Community, and I had to work very close to government for 3 or 4 years. And I was shocked how little time there was available to actually think about things. What was required was quick answers, quick responses, quick thinking. And actually, some problems are such that you need to take time over them. So I agree with you. We need to claw that back. And it's quite difficult when time is at a premium.
But don't you think that this idea of timing is such a premium is in a way inflated by just the sheer amount of nonsense that we are fed upon? Because really, what's the urgency of catching up on the latest gossip or on the latest news about, I think...
Fear of missing out. I mean, gossip is actually, we can see that evolutionary speaking, gossip was probably very important.
It's actually a primitive thing. So we are in a way attached to innovation and the news, So the more information you had, thinking primitively, the best your chances to survive were.
Yeah, but it makes sense.
So the thing is, like, I mean, our brains are wired in a way like we always flow where there's less friction, less resistance, and we flow through the. We flow to the places where we get more. I mean, gossip and information and news, and that's counterintuitive in a way, because that can flood your day, and then there's no time left for it to breathe important ideas.
I've seen it. It's interesting. I remember watching the moon landings with my grandfather.
Okay.
And as they landed on the moon, he said, "Well, that's wonderful." He said, "In my lifetime, I've gone from the fastest form of transport was horses. They used to lay straw in the street to deaden the sound of the horses, to seeing men land on the moon.
Wow.
And in my lifetime, we've gone from 3 carbon copies you wrote on 3 carbon copies to
cloud-based system.
I mean, it's quite extraordinary, extraordinary.
It is.
But in my time at Oxford, we've gone from a pigeon post I would communicate to a student with writing a little note, which I would then put in their pigeonhole.
On the pigeonhole, You still have pigeonholes.
And it would be sent to a different college. And that took 2 days and so on. And it would so 2 days later, I'd get a reply. And now we get a reply instantly. So actually, the time available for thinking about anything has
shrinking.
Unless we actually go out of our way to prevent the email coming in.
Right.
I mean, I do this by going to my local coffee shop to do any. If I have any serious work, I go to the coffee shop because there's no phone. I leave my phone at home.
Yeah.
And that's where I do my reading.
Yeah, you have to zone out in a way to concentrate. It's interesting, this conundrum, it's almost paradoxical, this idea between sometimes you have to not act, the importance of not acting, in the sense of some of the things that you're going to face in your life, you have to deeply embrace and deeply consider and dedicate the proper timing and consideration.
You have to screen out all the noise, all the stuff that isn't helping you deal with it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I love the case. I love the case for this sense of having these two processes that in a way are necessary and they will all exist. But in a sense, the way society is being created today, politics, celebritism, entertainment, appeals to a more urgent need, which is almost...
Well, I mean, there are always going to be people who want you not to put in the effort to think.
Of course.
Yeah. And of course, salesmen are preeminently amongst such people. I mean, they don't want you to stop and think,
and I think
really the car you want? Is this really the insurance policy I want?
And I think
you need this.
And I think this omnipresence of the salesman culture, which is in a way this idea of
culture,
consumerism, capitalism, in a way, like you are defined by what you consume and you dictate in a way the power you have over the world is the choices you make with the money you have. So it's interesting that you fall into this trap so constantly.
Well, yes, I don't want to blame it on capitalism. I mean, I dare say the socialist salesman is also wanting you to buy a product.
I agree.
I mean, the fact is that you have to stop and do what Descartes said, exercise skepticism, because your senses, for example, or
can be
belief system presents something to you as obvious.
Right.
And you can either take it at face value or you can turn around and say, well,
I don't believe it.
It is obvious, but is it? Is it? Should I really accept this?
Right. Yeah. So one very, very pragmatical question, Marianne. To most of the people that will be hearing this, they will probably not have any background in philosophy. I think it's also amazing, but we have grown a little viewership, which is quite nice. We're very, very surprised by the results. But most of the people that we talk to, they're really interested about the topic, but they have no idea where to start. So how would you recommend? I think your life story is just so inspiring. The way you almost stumble upon the philosophy. How would you suggest people approach this topic and start developing a more deep and more structured critical thinking, a passion for this topic?
Well, I mean, there are plenty of books around on critical thinking, including my own. On critical reasoning, and there are numerous online courses that can be done as well, some of them free. I mean, Oxford has an online course on critical reasoning that I wrote that is based on my book. That does cost money, but if you put critical reasoning into a search engine, you'll get a lot of stuff up.
Yeah, I would only recommend not to do only YouTube videos, because YouTube videos, I mean, sometimes they are made for their own sake. You know, they're made for you to watch more of those YouTube videos, not actually for you to learn.
Or with a sales purpose behind.
Yeah, or with a sales purpose behind, I remember when I asked you the same question in 2015, some years ago, and you recommended to me to always have, look for online courses, always with a good institution behind the course. And you recommended the meditations from Descartes. You told me those are, I mean, they're not an extremely accessible book, but it's kind of it's not a long book. It's not The Republic from Plato.
And it's quite easy to read.
Yeah, it's quite an easy read. So the meditations is a good place to begin.
Yes. I mean, it's very much a philosophy book. So I'm not sure it's ideal for those who actually want to engage in critical reasoning.
I see.
Absolutely. I mean, my podcasts have been downloaded 7 million times. I mean, they're possibly a good place to start, and they're completely free.
Yeah, that was a great. How was that for you? I mean, you were not expecting to have this kind of impact. I mean, 7 million people have listened to your podcast.
The University of Oxford sends out these podcasts for free, and anyone can access them from anywhere in the world. I mean, it's just a question of going to the Oxford University podcast site and putting in my name, and the critical reasoning podcasts will come up. There are 2 series, an earlier one and a later one, and the later one is the one I recommend.
Okay. One question, do you have subtitles for those in different languages?
Certainly not in different languages, I'm afraid.
Only in English, maybe.
I mean, the first one is called The Nature of Argument, and there are 6 different podcasts.
The
I
nature of
can't remember
arguments.
what they're all called, I'm
Yeah,
afraid.
of course. Yeah. But that's an interesting point. Yeah, and
But you might put a link to them on the site.
of
where
course.
you-
Yeah, we will absolutely
Yeah,
do
we will
that.
put it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep, we'll take
I
your
have
word
a
on it.
question for you, Marianne. So with all this technology booming, I mean, that you mentioned from the moment you were born or today, and it's not stopping anytime soon. There are all of these implications and remnants and reminders of this massive advance of technology. I don't want to blame capitalism or socialism. I just want to talk about the technology. What do you think the technology is doing to the way we see the world, our worldview, our way of interacting with each other? How is that changing from?
I mean, it's very difficult to say because to start with, I'm probably the wrong age group to reflect on that, because I'm tempted to say that it's making it much more difficult to concentrate on anything. I mean, one of the things that I find is that to do philosophy, you've got to get down to a certain level of concentration where you've actually shut out everything else.
Right.
And if you're hooked on social media, if you're needing to check your Facebook and Twitter feed every 5 minutes, or even your email account, or if you've got your email account dinging every time something comes in, it's very difficult to get to that level of concentration. And if that were to go away, that would be a real loss. But then, as I say, I'm of an age where I didn't have to deal with social media and email and so on.
Well, I disagree. I think you're in the right age group to talk about this because you had.
I do know both.
You know both, yeah. Many people many kids that are growing up today, they
will
already
never have the comparison.
They already have a tablet. On their face when they are very young, and a lot of TV not one TV screen, but 5 or 6 screens every day. So they're not gonna have the chance to see, the other side.
I think it really is quite threatening because I do think it's very important that we learn how to concentrate and also I think that we're bored and let our mind wander and be creative.
Yeah, if you're
it's very
fed,
easy not to be bored today as well.
yeah, we don't have enough time to be bored, which is it's amazing. Well, so if we take this idea to the extreme, Marianne, in the sense that so let's extrapolate a little bit. If we say okay, so the tangent is technology will keep evolving in a way, right?
Yeah.
We'll keep in this direction, and I will expect, in a way, people to develop a more educated sense of content curatorship. Let's call it. So you can, in a way, curate a little bit better what type of content you should spend time.
Filter some ideas.
Yeah, and you should filter some of the
Content.
of the content that is fed to you, right? But it seems people is not being able to do that because the velocity of content being created versus our capacity to adapt to it and curate it is it's uncomparable. Let's say.
Well, the other difficulty, of course, is that we're used to learning from our elders, at least when we're children.
Right.
And of course, with the new technology, a lot of this is difficult because actually children know far more than their elders.
Yeah.
I mean, my godson can come here. He's 13, and he can deal with things that even though I'm quite technologically savvy, he just runs rings around me at the age of 13.
But then again, if I keep stretching this logic, so let's say, okay, so technology is still advancing, we have not developed or we can't catch up with our ability to curate the quantity of content generated. So if we extrapolate this idea almost dystopically, does it mean that there will be no time for critical thinking?
Well, that would be a disaster if that is true. I mean, surely a point must come where people are going to realise that if they want to think properly, they're going to have to shut things out. They're going to have to shut out some of the noise.
Right.
And I don't think that human beings naturally do want to think deeply, I think. I mean, we are rational people.
We strive for meaning, I agree. But do you think in the midterm, the intervention should come from... Because I think there is some... and I don't want to misuse the word, but almost some level of Machiavellism in the way digital content is created, because it's almost naively manipulative in the sense that they are pushing for this frenetic consumption. So does it need to be regulated internally from the content creators?
It goes back to salesmen, doesn't it? I mean, Facebook is selling us their algorithms, and they've sold it very successfully, and there are people who are hooked on it.
Yeah, they are selling.
Same with Twitter and WhatsApp and Instagram and all the others.
Yeah, and we are the products. We are the products Facebook sells us to the companies that are selling the ads.
Yeah, but it's
an intermediary.
Do you think there's value and there's ethical and moral value in regulating, or do we need to let society fail in order to adapt and evolve beyond this, let's say, perceived potential evil?
Well, these two things are consistent, of course. It might be that regulation comes in as a result of our going too far.
Yeah, I see what you're going. There's
because I think regulation is probably going to come, because unless the big companies regulate themselves, which they don't appear to be doing,
right?
Regulation will happen.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I would expect. Like for me, intuitively, I would think more about a change in our subjective posture in a way, and almost hope that we can learn as a society from this mistake and return to a more profound and more patient way of consuming content. But I don't know if this is viable. I don't know if this is even an existing possibility.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens. I mean, we have a situation at the moment. I mean, the phenomenon of President Trump, for example, who is the Twitter president, isn't he? Yep. I mean, he communicates with people via Twitter the whole time.
Yeah, and I even heard the case that he speaks in real life in 132 characters.
Right.
Horrible. Which is crazy. which is the format mediating the content,
but
which is
scary.
But
it's worked for him, hasn't it?
And it also makes me think about how we are almost cognitively getting used to this idea of getting bits of information in a precise shape, size, and matter. And in a way, it's almost having a retroactive impact in a way verbal speech is articulated, which is scary.
Well, I think, human beings are very quick at learning all sorts of things. So if speed becomes of the essence, then speed is what we'll learn. Mm-hmm. And if brevity is of the essence, and actually that's not a bad thing, because judging by some of the emails I get, efficient. Some people don't know how to edit themselves.
Darwin will be proud.
I think brevity is a very good thing.
It's a quality, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I think like all these platforms are just not exactly the right place to learn. I mean, because they're
certainly bad if that's the only platform on which we learn.
Yeah, I agree.
That's certainly bad. But I think they, as a supplement to learning through reading books and reading academic papers and things like that, I think that's fine.
Yeah, of course. But I'm talking about like Facebook and like Twitter and stuff. I mean, you can always get good links to good content, but then you have to be careful.
It is
fantastic for learning.
Learning what's out there.
But the problem is, like, some algorithms, they just reward. It's the salesman algorithm. We can call it that, like the consumer algorithm, and essentially it rewards people that just stay for longer periods of time and click more.
Exactly, and that's my moral issue with it, because we know that algorithms are designed to reward impulsive, conflictive. Almost like controversial. Everything that is controversial is rewarded by the algorithm, because the algorithm just wants more interaction.
I'm not sure that's true, actually, because one of the worries about Facebook is that you end up in your own little
bubble in this echo chamber
without ever hearing from anyone who thinks differently from you.
Correct.
And that's a very bad thing.
I agree.
Because there's no contrasting point of view.
I agree, but in that sense, we will have as a society to either readapt our necessity for debate and human interaction to this new medium that is replacing real life socialization, or we're going to have to regulate and go internally and fight the battle to reshape the battlefield and properly promote the right level of debate and human interaction.
Yeah.
Well, this is where the fear that I had about the fact that the children know more than the adults, because schools are like Leviathan. To turn the education system in any country around is a huge job.
Yeah, it's a monumental work.
Train the teachers to deal with something like this. I mean, and also to what extent? I mean, pornography, for example. Do we want schools to deal with pornography on the web, or do we want parents to be able to deal with that? If we want parents to be able to deal with it, how do we train the parents to know what's out there? I mean, parents know less about security and so on than their children do quite often.
But if we take that responsibility, what role does it play into the psychic building of the children versus what is learning from the parents? Do we need to delegate this to institutions? Then what are the repercussions of taking away this responsibility from the parents? Because a lot of what you learn about, most of what you learn about sexuality, it comes from the family knuckle.
Yeah. So the government's going to have to...
And arguably it should come from family
as
well.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean...
The government's going to start... They're going to have to hire kids in the future. I mean, if they don't understand the technology, you know, like if it's an old government, how are they going to deal with the issues if they don't understand the information?
But of course, if you hire kids, you've got again the problem that you pointed to earlier. I mean, I said that I was probably too old to comment on this, and you said no, you're the right age because you know
have both,
pre-social media and post.
Yeah.
But of course, actually, if you do to hand over the education to the kids, you've not got anyone who
as consultants, I would say, I would add. I don't know, maybe because I remember, just a few years ago, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, that big Facebook scandal, and they called Mark Zuckerberg to the Congress in the United States to testify.
Yeah.
The people that asked the questions, they had no idea. I mean, they had a vague idea of how the technology worked, and that's embarrassing because these big companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Google, Netflix now, and well, Disney doesn't use a lot of big data, but also Disney is using new technologies. Of course they are. You know, they're taking advantage of the fact that there's no
regulatory bodies have no idea.
So
but this is something that might have to change. I mean, I think regulation is coming, and it's coming quite fast.
Yeah.
But of course, the difficulty there is legislation depends on nation states.
Exactly.
And these organisations
are global.
Are global. They're not tied to any one nation state.
Exactly. We still have this border mentality, which is very geographical and physical, trying to impose rules on something that is intangible. It's almost
it's not just a mentality. It's also, I mean, the global legal system is still in its infancy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I read an idea a few days back, actually on YouTube. You can learn from YouTube as well. Counter saying what I said just a few minutes ago. That was like in the great history of the world, the global power has not. I mean, it's the exception that global power today or a few years back is tied to a country. So generally, it was like a monarchy or like a group of people or a religion. And today we see the world like, who are the global superpowers? And that's just like 400 or 600 years ago, where like the United States or like the UK were like the global dominant power in the world. And this idea I read said like, this is already changed. Like the people that control the world are not countries anymore. But they are...
But don't you think there's a ruling ideology that replaced this idea of the old monarchy?
Yeah, well, it's an evolved
version of this global power.
Exactly, it's an evolved idea of the monarchy. You know, it's
well, you could make a
monetary monarchy.
You could make a case for a superior meaning, which is the ruling ideology, which in a way is more powerful and more influent, you could say, than global powers or local powers.
I don't know.
I mean, maybe what we need is a world government, a global government. I mean, we have all sorts of things like international trade laws, international airline regulations, and that sort of thing. And we're going to need much more of that.
Yeah.
I mean, terrorism has no national boundaries.
Yeah, I agree. It actually strives on the fact that there are borders. And in the other sense, I think most of the most pressing issues for human condition today are global in a way. Like, how do we approach this idea of cloud-based technologies and these blurring lines between the individual and the cloud knowledge? sustainability and our impact on the environment, migratory systems in between countries, distribution of wealth. Like all these things can't be solved with local governments based on borders. It's just like we're trying to retroactively adapt an antiquated mindset to a new set of problems that don't fit.
Twas ever thus, and particularly with new technology, twas ever thus. Always we have. It's like in the biological world as well. Most of bioethics is dealing with new technology that already exists and problems that haven't yet had started to happen.
Right.
They will emerge.
Dolly was born in 1997, or her birth was announced in 1997.
Yeah.
And 3 months later, every country in the world had passed a law forbidding human cloning. But that law, the legislation avalanche that came in then, took 3 months to happen. But of course it happened because Dolly told us that actually human cloning was possible.
Yeah,
it's very interesting. So Marianne, I think we really want to be respectful to your schedule because you were so kind to spend a couple of minutes with us. It was really a pleasure. If we can ever do this again, let us know. We'll adapt to the agenda and we'll
love to chat with you.
We'll love to chat with you again. Probably next time we can make it about a specific subject and not
so we can
so many
constrain
tangents.
it.
Yeah, we can constrain it. But nevertheless, I think your story is not only wonderful and very inspiring, but also thank you so much. We will share all the links to your podcast and add a couple of extra people to those 7 million that have already heard your point of view.
Well, that would be lovely. You might also link to the critical reasoning course that I wrote at Oxford University.
Absolutely.
Although, as I say, that costs money, whereas the podcasts are free.
Yeah, we'll link both. People will decide how to act as consumers.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you so much.
Right, well, thank you very much.
Our pleasure.
Very enjoyable.
Thank you very much, Marianne.
Nice to meet
Have
you.
Have a nice day.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.